Hey everyone, do you know what a workplace seagull is? Yes, a workplace seagull is kind of like, well, real-life seagulls that we encounter out there in the world. They squawk all the time, and sometimes they crap all over us. You know these people. We tried that before in 1987. That's a stupid idea. It'll never work. What have you been smoking? Right? They crap over our new ideas or suggestions, anything new in the workplace. They just look for what's not working instead of focusing on what is working. It is thought that the typical person in a typical workplace hears 10 seagull comments during their workday for every one positive, constructive comment that they hear. So coming up, I've got some suggestions for you on how to de-seagallize, I believe that's a term, de-seagallize your workplace.
Let's energize your workplace. Mike's here for some serious fun.
So look, we know that working with seagulls can be incredibly morale-sucking. It can be draining to work with a seagull. People who just complain incessantly all the time to anyone and everyone who will listen. So we all need to take responsibility for how we communicate, for how we come across in the workplace, so we are not sucking the life out of everyone. So we're not one of those people that we are all happier to see leave the room instead of being happier to see come into the room. Do you know it is thought that 70% of all conflict in the workplace is based not so much on what we're saying, but just how we're coming across. Coming across in a overly negative seagull kind of way, only catching employees in the act of doing something wrong instead of praising and recognizing one another when we do great work, which is most of the time, right? Pointing out problems with new ideas instead of focusing on what might work with new ideas. And not even bringing forward new ideas, simply complaining and crapping all over new ideas, instead of offering any solutions. So you need to, if you're going to create a more collaborative, compassionate, inspiring, and fun workplace, you need to create perhaps a no seagulls policy in your workplace. You need to go seagull hunting, not literally, but, metaphorically. You want to make sure you're getting rid of the seagulls in your workplace, or that mentality at least. Now look, I'm not talking about ignoring conflict. All that does is create more conflict. It just kicks it down the road. So the elephant in the room just eats more and more and gets fatter and fatter and fatter. What I'm talking about, though, is creating a more compassionate, constructive workplace environment where people do have healthy debates. I hope you have healthy debates in your workplace, passionate debates in your workplace, but debates based on the issues and challenges, not on personalities, and done in a respectful, constructive way where everyone is coming forward with the best of intentions to figure out the best possible idea or the best possible solution. So rather than complaining, which can be really draining in the workplace, I want to offer a few suggestions on how you can shift into a more explaining kind of mode. So instead of being a complainer, be an explainer in your workplace, a far more constructive place to be. So my first tip is adopt a mindset of curiosity. Rather than initially squawking over some change in your workplace or some new idea, take a step back and get curious about the new idea. Take the time to pause and ask some questions. How might this work out for us in the long run? What might we do to improve this idea if I have some concerns about this? I love Brené Brown's, the great leadership expert Brené Brown's framing of this when she talks about taking a step back to just ask these questions. Do I have enough information to freak out? And then number 2, will freaking out help the situation? Those are great questions to ask to keep that seagull voice at bay. Number 2, adopt the Netflix policy. They have this great kind of rule or policy where if somebody starts complaining about someone at work, their colleague we'll stop them in the tracks and say, I don't want to hear your seagull complaints to me. You need to talk to Susan because this is an issue that only Susan can resolve or help you with. So they stop gossip in its tracks. They do their best to make sure that people aren't squawking about one another behind each other's backs. Number 3 mindset to adopt, if you want to be an explainer and not a complainer, is to talk to the people who can actually solve your issue or solve your problem, or who need to hear your constructive criticism. You see, complainers, seagulls, tend to complain to just everyone, and it becomes so morale draining because they go into any room and all they want to do is squawk and squawk and squawk to everybody. So focus your constructive criticism to the people that need to hear it, to the people that can actually shift the conversation. Otherwise, you're draining everyone's motivation, you're sucking the life out of your workplace, and you're creating unproductive conversations that don't help anyone. Number 4, complainers tend to react in the moment. They get very angry, they get very emotional, whereas explainers take the time to calmly respond instead of react in the moment. And they respond using logic and using facts to explain their perspective and to offer some different perspectives. Number 5, complainers tend to do monologues, don't they? They just endlessly. They just want to be heard. Whereas adopting an explainer mindset, you embrace the idea of actually having a dialogue with somebody. So you go back to that idea of being curious and wanting to hear other people's perspective and ask questions so that you understand the perspective of other people or understand the issue deeper before you prematurely crap all over the idea or whatever it is that's challenging. Number 6, complainers often assume bad intent. That management, their boss, whoever it is, did this just to be spiteful, or they did this just because they're jerks. Whereas explainers come from a mindset of assuming that people have the best of intentions in their company. They maybe just don't have all the facts. Maybe you have a different perspective. That will help them change their mind about something. That will help them go in a different direction. So assume positive intent from everyone, and you're going to be far more likely to make your case in a more constructive, positive way. Number 7, complainers tend to blamestorm. They want to know who's to blame for this, and they point fingers at people. They never turn the finger onto themselves and point that finger at themselves. Explainers take responsibility for their own part of any issue in a workplace. They take responsibility for their own response and their own actions and behaviors. Number 8, complainers tend to use labels. So they'll call people names, they'll call people jerks or doofus faces for doing something, whereas complainers stay away from labels, which just get people's back up and don't do anything to move a conversation forward or constructively find a resolution. Complainers, instead of focusing on pointing again fingers at people or labeling people with negative labels, they will, when they're having a conversation, talk about behaviors that they've observed. Number 9, complainers tend to just focus on what's already happened, on the past, right? They just rehash the past over and over and over, right? They just keep talking about it till we're just also sick of it. Yes, we know you don't like this, but it happened in 1987. Get over it. We can't change the past. What can we do now to make sure moving forward we can make things better? Number 10, those complaining seagulls, those complainers tend to just focus on the negatives. So they, like heat-seeking missiles, they will focus on just even the tiniest little things that aren't going to work with an idea, or the tiniest little thing that went wrong with this event you held today. Whereas explainers also remember the positives that happen. They have a balanced perspective, so they can articulate the idea that, yeah, there's some good ideas in here. There's some good, solid reasons for doing this. However, I have some concerns, and I have a yes and approach, the old improv approach, on how we could make this even better. Number 11, those complaining seagulls, those complainers tend to make it all about themselves. They take it really personally, right? Like this was all done just to annoy them, just to get them really angry, right? They take it personally, and it all becomes about them, how this is going to affect me. Whereas constructive explainers look at the big picture, and they realize this is nothing personal. I'm going to come from a perspective of what's best for my team, what's best for my department, what's best for the customer, what's best for our entire organization, and try and constructively offer some better solutions. And finally, number 12, complainers tend to just, complain endlessly. They just squawk, but they never offer better ideas. Nobody wants to hear from you if all you're doing is squawking. But if you come with a couple of great ideas, well thought out ideas, if you've done your homework and can offer some better solutions, then of course I would hope people will listen to you. They will at least give you the time of day to hear you out. If you come in with a mindset where you've got some great ideas that are going to improve things rather than just coming to vent and complain and be a seagull. So 12 mindsets that might help your workplace minimize the amount of seagulling going on in your workplace. What do you think about this topic? Do you have seagulls in your workplace? Do they drive you nuts? How do you handle seagulls? Have you been a seagull yourself ever? Leave a comment in the comment box below. And as always, if you haven't subscribed yet to my Inspiring Workplace channel, hit the subscribe button. Join our growing community as we continue to talk about seagull-free, inspiring, collaborative, rocking, fun workplaces.